There are two kinds of good content. One, the universally appreciated that bring everyone together. These are the type that no one has any concrete complaints about. They are the reason to still go to the movie theaters. And two, the type that divides everyone. They often create a niche or a cult following. They are either loved by critics or loved by audiences. But then there's a third kind. The less popular gems of world cinema, including some successful films in the West that only a few are watching or recommending in India, when in fact, they deserve more attention than the annoyingly mediocre things we actually end up watching thanks to the hype or the OTT algorithms. This channel is about the third kind. This is. And today, we're going to talk about The Hunt. If you haven't heard about it, this is what you should know. The Hunt is a Hollywood horror satire based on the 1924 short story by Richard Connell, which itself was inspired by the big game hunting safaris in Africa and South America, particularly fashionable among wealthy Americans in the 1920s. The Hunt was released a century later in 2020 and premiered in India directly on Netflix a few months later with zero marketing and zero buzz. It did trend on the platform for a brief period of time, but it didn't make an impact on a large part of the audience here, despite being a fast-paced, fun, sometimes scary social commentary. While in the US, what the audience actually focused on were its flaws and some tweets from former US President Donald Trump. Everyone thought his tweets didn't matter until January 2021, but apparently they did matter even before that, just on a smaller scale. The tweets and some mass shooting incidents in the US kept the film in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. This put many people off the film. They chose to speak about the film without even watching it. Probably why it made very little money compared to what the business usually is for such films. To add to their problems, the pandemic hit right after they released. Here are a few right reasons you should be excited to watch it before Netflix throws it in the dump on 15 November. The premise. The idea came from the film's co-writer Damon Lindleof when they were discussing Richard Connell's Most Dangerous Game. The short story features a big game hunter from New York City who falls from a yacht and swims to what seems to be an abandoned and isolated island in the Caribbean, where he's hunted by a Russian aristocrat. The Hunt manages to successfully flip this premise where the hunters become the hunted and fulfills the promise of the premise straight from the brilliantly executed cold open, which keeps you guessing for who the real protagonist of the film is. Fun, over-the-top gore. The gun violence controversy surrounding the film got so bad that Damon Lindelof had to step out and confess that the film is not that at all. And if more people had watched this film instead of judging it before, then they would have realized that it's the same violence used in much older slasher films. In fact, an Oscar-winning writer-director actually made his entire career for over-the-top depiction of violence. If you're a fan of the fun, gory violence in his films, and if you're a fan of producer Jason Blum's Blumhouse movies, then you will definitely enjoy this one too. Surprising celebrity cameos. You'd be surprised at the number of known faces who agreed to do a cameo like this one in the cold open itself. Not to mention Oscar winner Hilary Swank in an antagonistic special appearance. The movie does a good job with the casting too, especially Betty Gilpin, who carries the whole movie on her shoulders. The message. What the media largely misinterpreted about the film was its messaging. They even said it was mixed messaging, which to an extent you end up agreeing with, because it's rich, bored liberals who are essentially the left wingers killing the right wingers who were at the time essentially Trump supporters. But when the controversy around it kept going uphill, Damon Lindelof spoke up, citing that it's not about the left wing or the right wing. The film is a fun take about extremism, which brings me to the next reason. Damon Lindleof. Many might have heard or read about Greg Zobel as the director of the universally acclaimed Mayor of Easttown, but before that, he made a few low-budget indie movies including The Hunt, where he collaborated with Damon Lindelof for the second time after another acclaimed show called The Leftovers, a show that even Marvel Studios couldn't help but borrow from. But Damon Lindelof shot up to one of Hollywood's most bankable and reliable writers because of a show he did much earlier. And he continuously proved his knack for blending absurd sci-fi premises with social commentary with his most recent work as showrunner of Watchmen. The Hunt is not one of his most thought-provoking works, but it's definitely the only film where things are a bit more light tone-wise than the heavy drama we're used to in his or Zobel's works. Even if we do ignore the political themes, The Hunt stands tall in the good old and crowded Hollywood slasher genre. Sadly, India mein horror genre is not really crowded, which is bizarre because horror movies like The Hunt are supposed to be simple with limited characters and a contained setting, which is producer code for low budget, high concept. Plus, horror movies are a great way to tell stories of social issues. There are people in the South who are risking everything to bet on the story and the characters, but Hindi cinema is focused on horror comedies because dark comedy plus horror has not made them as much money yet. And we all know everyone plays safe until one film paves the way for the next 2 decades of dark horror satires. You can watch The Hunt on Netflix before 15 November. In special mentions, check out two more gory slasher films that blend social commentary with the idea of big game hunting well. They are currently streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar.